I'm almost done with the sleep room. Um, a sadistic psychiatrist and the women who survived him. And um, John Stock does a really impressive job with the book, researching, and the way he has it formatted is he includes chapters from the survivor's perspective. So the women that survived him have a voice directly in their own voice, and um and then as far as William Sargant, he all the evidence um, leads to him being a rapist, and he was praised in by the elite and the media, and also he was heavy influence on Ewan Cameron, the psychiatrist in Canada, who was another MK Ultra mind control scientist who also had a sleep room. So they use the same techniques, just with slightly different doses of drugs. But the basic idea was you drug a person with a truth serum, barbiturate, and then you do electroshock, uh, electroshock, so-called therapy, ECT. Um, and he claimed he could treat um, schizophrenia, depression, anorexia, bulimia, kind of. And I think, yeah, Amy Winehouse was one of his victims, the blues, rhythm and blues singer, jazz singer. Um, the also one of the hippie um, ladies, groupies. She was a lover of Jimi Hendrix, and I think she married Keith Richard. I think she's in here as Linda Keith, and so there was a lot of like famous, high-profile victims, but other women are have organized together to file. They're trying to file a civil lawsuit, but they've some of them have filed some claims, I think, already. And yeah, he definitely worked with intelligence services, and basically his argument was that if a person is has a sexual activation and orgasm, then they lose all defense mechanisms, and then they're easily suggestible to have their views changed. And he was fascinated by this Pavlovian reaction of dogs, where the dogs could become the who the dogs were friends with. They could now become complete enemies and want to attack and kill their previous friends because of some traumatic experience. And he argued that this is what happened with the interrogation of soldiers that who, who would have these long confessions that were at odds with their own military side. So they were basically supporting the opposite military side. And so his so the idea was that you could create a Manchurian candidate by using this technique, because you could do whatever you want to a person and they wouldn't be able to remember it. and then so you could reprogram their mind, but they wouldn't remember that they had been reprogrammed. And um, let's see, yeah, you know, people said he was, tall and handsome, but they also were repulsed by just his like being so demeaning and degrading and torturing people obviously and raping them like when they're drugged up and stuff. And he would try to make his moves on them afterwards when they weren't drugged up, and then they would resist. And so he would insist, he needed to be alone with the patients when they're drugged up. It's just like his house was full of pornography and stuff that um somebody reported when they saw the books on the walls were just like um so the guy he was a psycho himself. He was the one, actually he had been treated by one of these like electroshock therapy, supposedly like he had been admitted to a psych ward. And ironically, my mom actually worked in a psych ward for her first paycheck job out of high school, and she had to administer the muscle sedative or relaxant. They give them a muscle relaxant because the electroshock is so strong that the people will fracture their bones or even break their bones from the body convulsions. Um, yeah, so both you and Cameron and um, William Sargent were just like shock, like just like literally shocking people to death. I think he had 5 patients that died that were killed by him. Um, out of something like 500 or something. So not a very good success rate when you're um, 1 out of 100 success rate of killing your patients is pretty scary. Um, but he also was definitely criticized by the psychologists and some of the psychiatrists, and um, but he would be relied on by the British MI5 or MI6. Like they would bring him in to interrogate supposed spies or whatever, or people who might be spies, um, and yeah, they were inspired by his approach to mind control, and they used LSD also. So that Porton Downs video that's on YouTube of the soldiers wandering around under LSD and they refuse to do the orders, all the evidence suggests that he led that study for the military. And so yeah, it's a fascinating book. I'm not quite done with it, but I've been reading it really slowly because it's like so well written, and he really did his research. And when you read the book when you read about the book, you're like, it's like, oh, he couldn't find any evidence that William Sargent was connected to the military or funded by the CIA. It's like, well, or or the British intelligence, but he also relied on big pharma funding. So he would hold these conferences, and they were totally all about just big pharma drugs, that the bring in like just keep using the big pharma and keep getting all their money as much as possible. Um, so yeah, it really corroborates the fact that you and Cameron and William Sargant, they were both like top psychiatrists in their field. And Ewan Cameron, he founded the World Psychiatrist Association, and then they would organize conferences together of the World Psychiatrist Association, like him and Ewan Cameron, and then they would speak. They had like a competitive sort of mind control. um, well, technically it was like electroshock treatment, but they were both sort of like feeding off each other. It was a rivalry that, and they would give talks there at their conferences, and then their assistants would follow up on their research and all that. And um, yeah, so it's a good thing that the women in Canada, they sued against Ewan Cameron, who was directly funded by the Human Ecology Fund, which is a CIA front. And then Ewan Cameron and William Sargant were closely in cahoots. Um, and um, so yeah, the William Sargant was directly working with the military intelligence, even though they can't say whether that he funded them or they funded him directly or not. They're not quite sure about that, but um, he definitely worked with them very closely, and he had funding that was high level and secretive, whether it was big pharma or the military. They're not quite sure which was which. But he also had like elite funding, private elite funding, and he would attend these swinger sex parties, and then the Scientologists, they did a big expose on him, as because their Scientology is against psychiatry being a so they exposed William Sargant as this sex crazed s- sadist, which is what he was. He was a psychic vampire, that rapist or whatever. So it's kind of very apropos of what the current leadership is now exposed as in the US and the UK. So I will finish this book. Let's see, I got 10 pages left, so the very final end. And I actually know somebody who did get ECT, electroshock therapy, and this friend of mine, he got addicted to pornography by middle school. He invited me over to his house, and he's like, "Oh, look, try." He tried to get me to watch it, but it didn't. You couldn't really see it. So, but I was just kind of like, "Oh, great," And then in high school again, he had me over, and he's like all excited to show me. Um, and then he got depression. That was from smoking. That's the other thing, is that William Sargant had suffered from depression, and he was a chain smoker. And we know from um, traditional Chinese medicine that the emotion of the lungs is sadness. If you damage your lungs, it causes sadness. So it's kind of ironic that he didn't realize that that was the real cause of his depression, was his chain smoking. But also, if you're burning out your Jing energy, um, the lungs is the yang qi, the source of the yang qi for the kidneys. So that would also cause depression and depleting the Jing psychic energy, and then you'd have to like feed off it from other people. Um, So that's basically it for well, I used to have his book, The Mind Possessed, and I don't know what happened to it. I can't, I think if I gave it away or somebody stole it or whatever, I don't know. I I had a bunch of books go missing and I've reacquired them, but I probably won't reacquire The Mind Possessed just because he goes around, he studies non-Western, trance cultures, trance dancing and all that, and that's when he really emphasizes the, tantra thing or whatever, tantric magic, that this idea that the, person could be controlled if they're, having an orgasm or whatever, and, um the problem is that he's, stealing other people's energy. He's like a low frequency, um, psychic vampire. So he's feeding off their energy so he can do his thing materialistically as a male, and and then he gets addicted to that. So he's like basically searching out victims, and in the sleep room that he had set up, it actually got shown on TV for like 15 seconds where they showed all these zombie women in their beds, and the everybody was scared of the sleep room. And it stank because they couldn't clean the women well enough. They had to give them enemas and try to cover it up with smells, like other drugs or whatever. Um, and then they were given insulin to put them into a forced coma, and then they were given these other drugs on top of that, and it was just like total, um yeah, tragic. And then their supposed, their psychiatric problems usually just returned when they came out of it, and but sometimes they would get so scared and want to get out of there that that was the only way, that w- that wouldn't it wouldn't improve based on that, trying to survive or whatever. So, um, yeah. Anyway,